I'm Brenda Caldwell, aka Dr. B. Welcome to the Hope Zone, moving you from a place of hopelessness and brokenness to a place of healing and wholeness, a place where hope is alive to bring you more peace, more joy, more freedom, and more understanding of your God-given purpose. Let's enter the Hope Zone. Hi, and welcome in to another edition of the Hope Zone with me, Brenda Caldwell, aka Dr. B. And today we are here with episode number 76. That's it, number 76. And we are today talking about something that I think is going to make an impact. I believe will give some insight, some encouragement, some hope, maybe some conviction, but more than anything, I decree and declare that today's episode of the Hope Zone is going to make a difference in your life and perhaps in the life of somebody you know, because you're going to be wanting to share this topic here. And so we are talking about today in the Hope Zone, where there's hope for every situation. That's it, where there's hope for every situation. Today's topic is simply this. I'm asking you a question, and the question is, what does sex and forgiveness have in common? Oh, what a question. What a question. You never would really put sex and forgiveness in the same sentence, but I want to ask that question again. What does sex and forgiveness have in common? Ooh, let's break it down. Let's break it down. I just want to share that I have been called to both of these subjects for many, many years. I've had the calling, the grace, and the assignment to teach on sex, to teach on sexual purity, to teach on breaking sexual soul ties. And so I've worked for many, many years with teens, with singles, with married couples. Yes, just like Paul was never married, but Paul ministered to many, many, many married people as he wrote half the New Testament, and so much of that was to couples. So I have a grace, if you will, somewhat like Paul, but God has kept me to be able to be raised up for such a time as this, because we need to talk about it in a healthy way, and perhaps in a way that you've never had it really broken down. So yes, I've been called to talk about and teach on sex from a healthy perspective, from a godly perspective, from an original context perspective, as well as forgiveness. So talking about forgiveness, again, that's an area I am a expert in the area of forgiveness therapy, have been teaching on forgiveness for many, many years, for over 20 years now. And God's given me a grace in this area of forgiveness. And I'm just grateful to have seen so many people set free from forgiveness issues, hate, anger, bitterness, resentment. People just are carrying these emotional tumors that they don't have to carry. And so I am grateful to God for to have the grace to teach on forgiveness as well, and to have seen so many people set free over the years. So it has given me a unique perspective, I will say, and I'm grateful to God for that. I am. To God be the glory for the work that I do and get to do in the earth. I just want to make a difference in people's lives. So as we talk about this subject today, and the question again is, what does sex and forgiveness have in common? What do they both have in common? Well, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer, and then we're going to break it down. Okay. And the answer is simply this: both sex and forgiveness are the two most misunderstood and misused gifts that God ever created for his people. Yes, that is what they have in common. Sex and unforgiveness are the two most misunderstood gifts and the most misused gifts that God has created for his children to enjoy the benefit of in the earth. And so how do I break this down? I got to break it down by letting you know, again, both of these, sex and forgiveness, are both principles and teachings that come straight from God's word. God is the author of sex. God is the author of forgiveness. He is the one that created both of these concepts, both of these entities, both of these were created by God himself. And God is a God of purpose. Remember that. God is a God of purpose. Everything that God created, he created for purpose. But what happens is this: when we don't understand the purpose of a thing, we can then abuse that thing. And that is what has happened with both sex and forgiveness. You have both of them needing to be in the same sentence because they do share a commonality, and that is they are gifts that were created by God that are totally misunderstood and misused, and in many cases have even been have been abused. So let's break it down. First, let's talk about sex here. What is the purpose of sex? Okay, I want to give just a basic breakdown because, of course, if you're an adult, you should know about sex. We know some things about sex. I mean, we all learned about sex somewhere, somehow, whether it was in the streets, whether it was in church, whether our parents set us down and talked to us about it. However way you've learned something about sex, better known as sex. But we're going to talk about it today from a pure perspective and a holy perspective and a perspective in which God himself has ordained. And so as we talk about sex and forgiveness and what they have in common, let me start with what sex is. So sex in and of itself was created by God for two purposes. Once again, purpose. God creates things for purpose. Sex was created, first of all, for procreation. You and I are both here because of sex. Our parents came together, procreated, and we were born. You were born, I was born. Who authored that? Who created that mechanism? Who created that biological means and biological system? God himself. God who created man, come on, and then he created Adam and then he created Eve. Are you with me? God created humanity. God himself is the author of sex and of procreation. And so, yes, God created sex for procreation so that children could be born, so that generations after generations after generations could be born. Absolutely. Procreation obviously is a very powerful gift to the earth. Otherwise, we would have died. We would have died out thousands of years ago. So we're grateful for the gift of sex from that standpoint of it being procreation for humanity to continue to be birthed. The second purpose of sex is this: God created sex for husbands and wives for the gluing of the soul, the gluing of the heart, the mind, the emotions, the will to come together so that the bonding of a husband and wife in God's original text and the creation from the beginning. We're talking about going back to the basics today, the way God originally created sex. And there could be much debate about it, but I'm not here to debate with anyone, just simply to share the facts and the truth of how God himself is the author of sex. No man created sex. And no man created the concept of forgiveness. It came from God. And so God created sex for, again, procreation. And secondly, for the bonding, the gluing of the hearts together for a husband and wife. And that's why if you've ever seen anybody who's been married, 35 years, 45 years, 50 years, a lot of people, unfortunately, in marriage are not lasting that long in marriage. But for those who have done the distance, and not just done the distance, but have been faithful to one another, faithful, kept their marriage bed pure, meaning they have not committed adultery. They've not been having outside relationships. They did not have all those different relationships coming into their marriage. They were either virgins or they were born again virgins, and they had kept themselves, if you were entered into celibacy before marriage. However, but after they got married, they were faithful to one another. That is a couple that has done it God's way, and the favor and the blessing of God is upon it. But what happens is to understand that was the gift of sex, that God would give that bonding of the heart. Because if you've been faithful to your husband or faithful to your wife, and you have no outside relations with anybody else, you're not committing adultery, you're not, having outside relationships in any way, form, or fashion, and both of you are committed to one another, what happens is it glues your heart to your spouse. and it allows you to keep your mind on your spouse, your heart towards your spouse, and it keeps you from competing, if you will, with anybody else. And that's a powerful gift. Imagine that is a gift that God created, and He wanted there to be that bond of unity and that bond of love and that bond of commitment. Why? Because marriage in and of itself is an institution of God. God is the author of the marriage covenant. And so what happens is if husbands and wives are keeping that covenant, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful gift. And it allows for, again, for a husband to be a father when children come into the marriage. And we have so many absent homes, fathers that are absent from homes because we are not honoring that marriage covenant, that gift that sex brings, if you will, to the earth. God knew what He was doing. He knew what He was doing. God is the one who created the formula, the covenant. God's the one who created sex. And if we would just have honored Him and done it His way, the Bible says right here in Hebrews 13:4, it says, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and the sexually immoral. God is a God of covenant. He's a God of character. He's a God of purpose, and He's a God of order. And it is His will that we do things decent and in order. And because sex, if we can just be honest and just be real, has not been treated as a gift, it has not been treated in the way in which God ordained it to be treated. That is why our communities worldwide are plagued with so much destruction that comes at the hands of the misuse of sex. Number one, as I said, fatherlessness in homes. So many children are not able to grow up with their father because, again, there was no commitment of loyalty. That was just having fun, if you will, and not entering into a covenant to marry this wife, marry this woman, and stay bonded to her. No, because of that, we have fatherlessness as a major epidemic in this country because of the misuse of sex. We have rape that occurs every single day, all day long, both women and children and even males and boys that are raped, violently raped, abused, sexual abuse. Those are some of the ills that are in the earth. Why? Because sex has not been treated as a gift. You have sex trafficking. This is an epidemic, a growing epidemic, and we're seeing it more in the news now. Literal sex trafficking, human trafficking, buying and selling human beings for the purpose of sexual pleasure as an all-time epidemic, one of the growing epidemics in our country. Oh my God, all because sex has not been treated as a gift. It's not been taught as a gift, to be treated and honored as a gift. And so you have it being used in a violent way, in a perverted way, in a ungodly way, in a way of an unlawful way. Again, so much. You have abortions that take place and has grown steadily. Again, it's because sex has not been treated as a true gift. And so someone may get pregnant and unfortunately turn to abortion, or someone is raped and feels that they need to abort the child for whatever reason abortion may take place. It's because somebody misused and violated the gift of sex because it has not been taught as a gift. Look at the poverty that we have in our country. Look at the welfare system we have in our country. Look at children being born daily, every single day into poverty. Why? Because you're not having husbands and wives coming together and being faithful and procreating and then bringing children into the relationship or into the marriage. We have a lot of children that are born without that benefit of marriage and without that benefit of the covenant. And it's because we're just not taught. And so it's not in any kind of way meant to be an indictment on someone who has a child and you have a child father and you did not get married. It's not an indictment against you in any kind of way, form, or fashion. It is to teach today the beauty and the gift that sex was intended to be, and that for the rest of our lives and moving forward and being able to receive this message in this podcast and realize that you deserve better. Sometimes we just have to make better choices and be able to hit the reset button and say, you know what? I do want to honor my body as a gift. I want to honor sex as a gift. I want to treat it as a gift and not as something to be misused and mishandled. And I know the music is a great influence today. We know music is a big proponent of a big advocate, if you will, of just doing anything with anybody, anytime. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. I can't tell you who to suck it to. Drop it like it's hot. Suck it, lick it, do whatever you want to do with it. But God is a God of order. Sex was intended to be a beautiful gift, and it's a misunderstood gift. Unfortunately, the church has not taught it as a gift. And so coming up in church, many of us, even as Christians and believers and followers of Christ, we didn't get a proper teaching on sex. Somebody may have just said, "Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't have don't bring no babies in the house and don't have sex." And the Lord said, don't have sex, but you don't talk about the why. We don't teach people to honor and understand the why. Why do we save ourselves? Why do we enter into celibacy? Why do we hit the reset button if we've already had sexual relations? Why do we keep ourselves if we've never had sexual relations? What is the benefit of it? What do we receive in the end? What is the promise of it? And God is a God who says he makes all things beautiful in his time. And without the benefit of doing and trusting God and doing it God's way, all we have to look at teen pregnancy out of control. Look at STD, sexually transmitted diseases, out of control. 1 out of 3 people that you have sexual relations with will have some type of sexually transmitted disease. That is scary. So we stop to think about it. What if we had just simply done it God's way? What if we begin to go back to operate the way that God ordained? He knows the best. He is the author of sex. And sex is not a dirty word. It is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to hide and be sneaky. It's not something, it was never ordained to be something that you can't even ever talk about, but it's ordained to be in a proper time. That's the way God originally did ordain this gift called sex. And what would the world be if we had honored that gift? We would have more marriages staying together because people would be more faithful to one another. They would not be having the issues of infidelity and adultery and outside children being birthed and being born and all of these different ills. We wouldn't have domestic violence being what we have today because people have sex and have sexual bonds and they have soul ties and they have so much possessiveness of another person that they've been with that they don't want them to be with anybody else, or they're physically violent. What if we just honored God and practiced this gift the way that God ordained it to be? We would have more, as I said, faithful marriages. We would have children having the benefit of both parents. We would not have so many people in prison. How many people go to prison because of some kind of sexual act, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's rape, whether it is having an adulterous affair and then getting caught and getting shot or shooting somebody and ending up in prison? What if we just had followed God's original plan? We would be in a much better state. We would have more loving, intact families. That's number one. We'd have more loving, intact marriages. Do you understand? We would be able, as a community, to be able to have more peace and more unity and more joy. Why? Because we would be living out our lives sexually the way God ordained. I know this is not a message that makes you jump and shout, but it is one that the Holy Spirit impressed upon my heart to teach on, because it's such a need for us to get back to the basics. There's so much perversion in the earth, and we have a generation of children that is just learning that anything and everything goes, but God did not ordain it to be just out loose and wild and perverted and so misused and so abused, and to leave so many people with broken hearts. Think about, there would be such less heartbreak if we had only honored God and handled sex and participated in sex the way in which God ordained it to be. God is a God of order, and sex is meant to be a gift that he makes beautiful in the context of a faithful marriage unit that God has ordained. And he originally did ordain it to be for husband and wives. God is a God of order, and that is the only way that procreation can take place. And that is through the benefit of a husband and a wife, a man and a woman. In the context, the way God ordained it originally was husband and wife. Now let's talk about this gift. This second gift, oh, it's getting hot in here, I'm telling you. This second gift that God created is the gift of, oh my God, the gift of forgiveness. You've heard me. If you follow my podcast, if you are a regular, you know that I teach on forgiveness quite often. It's one of my contributions to the earth to help heal wounded, hurting, wounded souls. And God created the gift of forgiveness. He sent the gift of forgiveness, just like he sent and created the gift of sex. He created the gift of forgiveness. He modeled it on the cross in the flesh as the incarnate Jesus Christ. He died on the cross, and part of his last words was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He modeled what forgiveness looks like when Jesus forgave those who basically murdered him from the cross. God is a God of love. He's a God of great mercy. He's a God of forgiveness. He created this concept of forgiveness to be a gift. And what is the gift in forgiveness? It's not been taught as a gift. It's been taught as a mandate. It's been taught and said that we must forgive and we should forgive because God's word says we forgive, but it's never really been taught as a gift. Today, I want to teach it as a gift because it is a gift. Just as sex is a gift, forgiveness is a gift. It is a beautiful, precious gift. And that number one gift, what makes it a gift, is that forgiveness is a gift that is intended to protect your heart. It is a gift that's intended to protect your heart from brokenness and to protect your heart when your heart is broken, I should say, to protect your heart so that you can heal when someone has wounded, when someone has hurt you, when someone has misused you or mishandled you. Forgiveness is intended to be that gift that keeps your heart healed, that keeps your mind free. Because when you're operating in unforgiveness and bitterness and resentment and malice and anger, and you want to get back at somebody, they're going to stay on your mind. You're going to always be thinking about them on your mind and feeling them in your heart, and it keeps you stuck. So forgiveness was intended to be a gift that allows your heart to be free, your mind to be free, your spirit to be free, to allow your prayers to be answered, come on, and not blocked, to allow your physical body to be healed, to prevent you, come on. Forgiveness is a beautiful gift that was intended to keep you from having cancers and heart disease and strokes and autoimmune diseases and tumors and all of these that can be a result of harboring hatred and bitterness and unforgiveness and all of these ill wills that many times people carry. So I want you to understand, don't be bamboozled, don't be fooled, don't be tricked by the enemy. He is a deceiver. That's all he wants to do, is to deceive you, to make you feel that you can never forgive and you shouldn't forgive, because if you forgive, you're weak. If you forgive, they're going to get away with it. If you forgive, nobody will have to pay for what they did to you. But I'm here to tell you, God originally ordained forgiveness to be a gift to free you, a gift to heal you, a gift to deliver you, a gift to propel you to keep moving forward. Even though we're going to be hurt, yes, we get hurt. Life is a risk. Relationships are a risk. People, we meet people and people will hurt us. Yes, We feel the pain, we feel the hurt, but we don't sit in it for a lifetime. God does not want us to sit on our pain and sit in our pain and sit in that hurt and sit in that offense the rest of our life. Why? Because we were sent to the earth ourselves as a gift. And that means that we are wasting time every single day, preventing ourselves from walking in destiny and walking out our purpose and being the people that God ordained us to be. But if we don't understand that forgiveness is a gift, and so many people don't understand it, why? Because it's not been taught. The church has not truly taught us to truly forgive and taught us how to forgive and why we should forgive and the beauty of forgiveness and the fact that it's a gift to heal our heart. It's a gift to free our soul and our mind. And as a result of that, what do we see in the world? We see so much hurt, so much heartbreak, so much pain, so much abuse, so many murders. All of this is a result of harboring hatred and unforgiveness. We see so much domestic violence in the earth because of people harboring unforgiveness. We see so many bad marriages because people are harboring unforgiveness. Oh my God. We see so many children being abused because you're taking your abuse that happened to you out on your children. It is real that because we are not understanding the gift of forgiveness, so many people are walking around like time bombs. We see road rage, people getting shot up, just innocent people dying, mass shootings that have become the norm in our society. Should not be the case, but so much of it can be traced back to unforgiveness. And all we have to do is get back to practicing the gift, receiving forgiveness as the gift that God ordained it to be. He ordained forgiveness to be a gift, not to let somebody get away with what they did to you. He says, vengeance is mine. Let me repay. Let me bring the justice. You, in the meantime, choose to forgive so that your spirit can heal, your soul can heal, your mind can heal, your emotions can heal, your body can heal. Does that sound like a gift? So that you can keep living, so that you can keep moving forward, so that I can bring good out of your life. Come on, so that you can have a testimony about overcoming what happened to you instead of living in it for the rest of your life and being a victim. No, God does not give birth to victims. He creates us to be overcomers. And that's why he tells us to forgive. He says, bear with one another. He says, forgive one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, had loved and forgiven us. In Ephesians 4:31, he tells us to forgive. He tells us in Matthew 6:14, he says, forgive men when they sin against you so your Father can forgive you. He says so many times in his word, if you know someone has unforgiveness toward you, listen, if you stand praying, listen, go take care of that. Take care of that before and then come back to pray. Why? Because he knows that unforgiveness hinders your prayers even from being answered. So forgiveness is the gift that keeps your prayers being answered. Come on. Forgiveness is a gift that keeps you connected to the Father. And so God wants you to practice the gift of forgiveness. And I know it's not easy. I know it can be hard. And that's why I have so many podcasts. All you have to do is go on my website, not my website, go to my YouTube page and just look at, and either my YouTube page or where, if you listen to the podcast, just do a search on the Hope Zone and you will see I have a long list of different episodes all around forgiveness. I teach on forgiveness from so many areas. So I'm not here necessarily to teach a long teaching on forgiveness, just to remind you that it is a gift. It has been misunderstood. It has been misused, but if you receive it as a gift and you begin to think about it, Dr. B is right. It's a gift to me. It's a gift to free me. And I'm not going to be tricked by the enemy anymore. So if you are right now harboring any unforgiveness or resentment in your heart toward anybody, and you've not been able to let go and you want to know how to forgive, go, as I said, and look up some of my podcast episodes in the Hope Zone. I have several podcasts that take you step by step on how to forgive. You can also order my book. Order one of the books I teach on forgiveness called Surgery for the Soul, Healing for the Hurting Heart. Surgery for the Soul, Healing for the Hurting Heart. It's on Amazon. You can get that book I promise you, it walks you through the steps of forgiveness. So as I close out, again, I want you to be reminded, sex and forgiveness are two of the most precious gifts that God ever created. And He designed them to benefit us as believers. He designed it to benefit us as people who live in the world. And all we have to do is love God enough to honor Him by treating both of these entities just as that, as a gift. Who would not want to receive a gift? If you receive a gift, you want to handle that gift the right way. And I want you to be encouraged to know and understand you can always start over. You can always start over. If you've not handled the gift of sex or the gift of forgiveness in the right way, you can start over and handle it the right way. And God will be pleased, and you will receive the favor of God enter into your life. Do you receive this word? I hope you do. I know this is a sensitive topic, but I am committed to being used by God to help somebody in the earth. And I always want to give a message that can touch somebody, to make somebody think about changing the way that you do your life, changing the way that you approach your life, changing the way you treat yourself, and changing the way that you treat others. Let us use both of these gifts in the proper way. Let us receive these gifts in the proper way that God has ordained. And for that, I promise you, God can get glory for our lives. There's so much that people have been going through in their lives. So many people have been affected because of the misuse of sex and the misuse, if you will, of forgiveness and not understanding them properly. I pray that this word today has helped you think about, as you move forward, how do you want to see both of these as gifts? Will you allow yourself to see both of these as gifts from God that need to be handled the right way? Well, that concludes today's episode number 76. My. So, as I always say in closing, in a world that has so much going on, there's still a reason to have hope. And I always want you to know that you can hold on to hope like a piece of rope. Until next time. I'm so glad you made it to the end of the podcast. If the Hope Zone is making a positive difference in your life, please subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. Leave a review, and most of all, share it with your friends. And remember, from your worst day to your best day, there's hope in every situation.